Hello everyone, I'm your host Aagya Awale. Today we are in TU premises to take you on a poetic journey on today's podcast. So today we'll be delving into the world of poetry by diving into the art of interacting with poems. Joining me are Anukul Aryal and Alina Dhakal, both avid poetry enthusiasts. Poetry, with its subtle nuances and vivid imagery, often invites us to engage with it in a multifaceted ways. Anukul, how would you describe the act of interacting with a poem?
Thanks, Aagya. Interacting with a poem is an intimate dance between the poet's word and our own emotions. It involves unraveling layers of meaning, feeling the pulse of the verses, and finding echoes of our own experiences within the lines. Don't you think so, Alina?
Yes, interacting with a poem is akin to having a conversation with the poet. It involves deciphering metaphors, feelings, the emotions embedded in the verses, and finding personal connections within the lines.
So let's try to apply it practically and take Robert Frost's famous poem The Road Not Taken as an example. Could you tell us about how this interaction takes place in this poem?
This poem often sparks contemplation about choices and the paths we take in life. Each reader may interpret it uniquely, resonating with their own journeys.
Thank you, Alina. Now, Anukul, how would you personally engage with a poem like The Road Not Taken?
For me, it's about reflecting on important decisions and the courage to embrace unconventional paths. I often visualize the diverging roads and think about the choices I've made, finding solace or motivation in first words.
That's a wonderful way to connect with the poem's essence. It's amazing how a few lines can evoke such diverse interpretations. Engaging with a poem can be an enriching experience. Could you guys provide a more methodological guide to help you interact with a poem?
Sure, but first, you must keep in mind that there is no single right way to interpret a poem. The beauty of poetry lies in its openness to interpretation and the personal connection each reader makes. You should feel free to revisit the poem multiple times, and often you will find that new meaning or emotions can surface with each readings, but this is a rough step-by-step guide to interacting with a poem. First, you have to select a poem.
Certainly, let's take Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken, as an example again.
And what would you do after that?
Then read the poem slowly and attentively at least twice. Pay attention to the words, the imagery, the rhythm, and how it makes you feel.
Alina, could you recite the poem for us, please?
Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I couldn't travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other at just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though, as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference.
After that, you jot down your initial thoughts and feelings about the poem. What emotion does it evoke? What images or ideas stand out to you?
Upon first reading, you might feel a sense of contemplation about choices and the idea of taking a less conventional path in life.
What about analyzing the poetic elements of the poem?
Yes, Aagya, you've identified a very important aspect of interacting with a poem. One has to identify and analyze any metaphors, similes, or symbol used in the poems. Think about what they might represent or suggest.
So, in the poem, you have to note the imagery of the two diverging roads, the speaker's hesitation and eventual decision.
What about understanding the underlying message or theme of the poem? How can we do that?
To understand the theme, we could ask these questions like, what is the poet trying to convey? Is there a central idea or feeling being expressed?
So you can think about the themes of choices, regrets, individuality, and the unpredictability of life's outcomes in the poem.
But how do you think we can connect to a poem on a more personal level?
Connect the poem to your own life experiences. Is there anything in the poem that reminds you of a personal situation or emotion?
In the context of the road not taken, you can reflect on a time in your life when you faced a significant choice. How did you approach it? Can you relate to the speaker's dilemma?
Yes, you can certainly build personal connections with the lines of the poem and feel the emotions of the speaker if you relate to the poem in such a manner.
Additionally, you can also learn about the poet's life, background, and historical or cultural context that might provide insight into the poem's meaning.
Yes, you can learn about Robert Frost's life and the historical context when the poem was written. Consider how Frost's experiences might have influenced the poem's themes.
Is it also possible to engage in discussions with others about the poem?
Yes, you can. Share your interpretation and listen to different perspectives. Sometimes others' insight can offer new dimension to your understanding.
Finally, you can write your response to the poem. It could be in the form of a reflection, a creative piece inspired by the poem, or even your own poem that responds to the themes or emotions evoked by the original. And you can also write a reflection about a significant choice you made or craft a poem inspired by the themes of decision making and its consequences.
But keep in the mind that this is only one way of interacting with the poem. Each person might have their own unique understanding of the same poem.
Yes, I agree with you, Anukul. There can be multiple interpretations of a single poem.
Thank you so much, Anukul and Alina. You have shown us how interacting with a poem involves diving into its nuances and considering its themes, language, and personal connections it brings forth. This example with the road not taken showcases how various aspects of a poem can be explored to gain a deeper understanding and personal connection. Thank you both for sharing your insights and experiences in interacting with poetry. I hope our listeners also gain some insights on how they should interact with a poem.
Thank you, Aagya, for inviting us in your podcast.
Much thanks to our special host Aagya for having us in today's episode.
Thank you, guys. And thank you everyone for tuning in to today's episode of the podcast. Keep tuning in for the next episode.